we will learn a lot with these two people. Okay, so Maria, whenever you like, you can start sharing your screen and take your time. Thank you.
Is it good? Okay. Okay. So thank you so much. Now I see you, so it's good. Thank you for inviting me here, and thank you for allowing me to talk and to share with you. And I hope we will make a conversation later about this big issue, because I think I am just 23 years old, and I think for many students with whom I talk, poverty seems a very complicated, very big issue. So bringing here a conversation about it, I think it allows us to fight for it, against it easier. Like you don't have to fight the whole system to be able to fight poverty. So I welcome you to this conversation also. So I'm going to start with a little bit of description of the SDG, and I will continue with some thoughts about how we should understand poverty so that we can fight against it easily. And I think this is very important nowadays because of COVID, and I am sure we will also talk about it later. So first of all, okay, like this. As you know, when we talk about the battle against poverty, we are talking about the taking SDG #1. So the first one, the front line of the Agenda 2030. This means the United Nations wanted to be the first goal we wanted to achieve, right? We are talking about an SDG that connects with all other SDGs to end poverty in all its forms everywhere. And we are going to see now that poverty does have many more dimensions than just the economical one. We are going to see along this presentation the political, the societal, and the personal dimensions of this issue. Thus, the relationship with the other SDGs, and this is the reason of this picture, is really important. There is no hierarchy among them, as you normally you probably know, but for sure there is an important relation and interconnection, interdependence between them. So let's go with a little bit of the description, and I'm sure it will get more interesting along the conversation. Today I want to talk about data, because sometimes we are lost with so many things that happen in the world, and bringing stories is very important, and bringing voice to the people that are behind the data is very important. But I think if today we can realize how many, really, how the distribution of poverty is around the world, I think we will be reaching a good point. So let's try to describe in depth this SDG. First of all, as we said, this is the front line of the Agenda 2030. And this means all organizations, all countries, society in general is going to put all its effort to trying to end poverty in all its forms everywhere since 2015, when this was signed. As we previously said, SDG 1 is the first SDG, and as you can read there, international poverty line is defined as $1.9 per day. This is a measure that has to be understood in relationship with American standards of life. It is not $2 in Cambodia, it is not $2 per day in Ghana, it is $2 per day in the United States of America. So nevertheless, we have to understand that this is an international poverty line. It is not the line that each country defines. Actually, every country, for example, Zambia or Ghana, establish their own poverty line, and it is below $1 per day. Thus, poverty cannot be just compared between countries, and it as well as solution solutions cannot be compared between countries. It can show us some things, because if we compare poverty between countries, we will see some dimensions of it. But we surely have to understand that poverty is also between or among inside each country. It's not in the first countries in the list if you look for poor countries, but the United States of America has a very big inequality. So when we talk about poverty, we have to compare between countries, but also see inside the country and see if the governments of each country, even in Spain, even in Italy, if they are really fighting against the poverty that we find in each country. This SDG has 7 targets and 14 indicators. You have there the description of what this means. And if you work in international cooperation or any other project related with the 2030 agenda, you will surely talk about targets and indicators. You start working with them daily. In the right, we can see why we need to strengthen our battle against poverty. Before COVID, the world was already off track to end poverty by 2030. 6% of the world, 6% of the world. So if we are here, almost 50 people, it will be 3 people from this room would be in extreme poverty. We are talking about extreme poverty, which doesn't mean which is a very serious problem of poverty, which is not the same as normal poverty or relative poverty. So if before COVID, the predictions in 2019 were that young workers were twice as likely to be living in extreme poverty as adult workers, or that 4 billion people did not benefit from any form of social protection in 2016. What has happened with all these people and many others that were very close to that line during this time? Even before COVID, 1 out of 5 children, 1 out of 5 was in conditions of extreme poverty. In this moment, COVID-19 causes the first increase in global poverty since 1998, since some decades ago. More than 71 million people, almost twice Spain, were pushed into extreme poverty in 2020. We are going to see why this happens and in what specific areas of human life this pandemic has a heavier impact. Here we can see the 7 targets. I'm not going to read all of them and the explanation of all of them because we would be a lot of time here, and I think you can find this and I can send you this presentation, but want to eradicate or because something very important about this Agenda 2030 is that it looks for everyone, every single social change maker to be part of it. So when we say we have these goals, it's true. All society has these goals to eradicate extreme poverty. Target 2, reduce poverty by at least 50%. This is the kind of poverty I was saying. This is not extreme poverty. Extreme poverty is target 1. Target 3, implement social protection systems. Target 4, having equal rights to ownership, basic services, technology, and economic resources. Target 5, build resilience to environmental, economic, and social disasters. And targets A and B, mobilize resources to implement policies to end poverty. This is a call for governments, and create pro-poor and gender-sensitive policy frameworks. This is very important because, as we see, SDG 1 is in every other 16 SDGs, but as well other SDGs such as SDG 5 about having equal rights, women and men, or all genders, is also present in this first SDG. So in the right you can find the relationships between them. As you can see, I surrounded by red those who I think are directly related. The others are also related indirectly, but this is directly related with 11 SDGs. So I think this is very important, and poverty is not just about not having money, it's also about having the resources to go to hospital, to be in a country that gives you free and good quality education, and we will see all these details soon. when we think about this battle against poverty, I think battle is a good word because we have been using a lot with COVID. COVID was a battle against a virus. Here we have also battle against poverty. We should think about a long journey, that is true, a long journey of work and effort that governments, civil society organizations mainly, and private sector have developed together. Here you have some numbers of how poverty was in 2019, how it increased in 2021, and what the predictions are that people will be in extreme poverty by 2030. So yes, we are off track, and I'm sure we will be talking about this in the discussion. Globally, economic fallout from the global pandemic could increase global poverty by as much as 500 million people, or what is the same to say 8% of total human population. This would be the first time, as I said previously, that poverty would have increased since 1990. Of course, there are areas that it has increased much more than others, especially in the rural areas. The rate has gone up until almost 20% of people. And as you can see in the map, in the top, you have the map of how poverty is nowadays. In green, you have the ones that will reach the goal of the agenda, and in red and in orange, the ones that won't. And in the bottom map, you can find the ones that will still be on poverty by 2030. And as you can see, we find a very impressive concentration on the sub-Saharan area of Africa. And we will see, because this sometimes can be confusing, and we will be talking about this later. Until now, we have been talking about extreme poverty, but poverty is a reality of 60% of world population. This is something I think really impressive. This is to say that we have a completely unsustainable system when more than half of the world's population doesn't have basic needs guaranteed. This is not a sustainable system, because while global economy is increasing and rich people is getting richer, global inequalities increase as well, and people living in poverty increase as well. Their way to escape poverty is then much more difficult than before. But why do we say that we live in a cruel scenario for 66% of world population? Well, COVID has a lot to do with it, and I can say it. I come from Tanzania. I came back in December, and I can say we see COVID very differently in many parts of the world, but this is something that we have all in common. I don't have time to go to all of them in very deep, and actually I'm going to have to go through them very quick, but for sure we can go to them later in the discussion, but very fast. COVID has increased food insecure people, has put many millions of children out of class, which has meant years of and decades of going back to people that don't have access to education. For sure, there is a very big difference between vaccines and how this has been distributed around the world. For sure, tests for COVID, most low-income countries haven't done tests to people, so the spread of the virus was not known. And many other, as you may understand, many other, for example, conflicts that have been increasing conflicts because of people that wanted to take advantage of this situation, to take the control of the population. When population is or has a conflict or has a fear, it is much more easier. So we can say we have been in some decrease in democracy and also in poverty fight. Until now, we have been seeing the reality of poverty, the numbers, the stories. We couldn't make it today because 15 minutes is very few, but we will talk about it if you want later. But from now, let's to the end. I would like to give a few tips to how to enforce this battle that seems so big and that can make change makers go away to another thing. No? The first thing we should demand is a new speech. a new speech about poverty. And this is, I think, something that for sure the next speaker will talk, because I think communication has an enormous importance in how we want to end up with the inequalities. Why do I say this? I think we have to promote a new speech, changing the paradigm of poverty. Even the agenda has to change it. The paradigm of poverty towards the paradigm of impoverishment. In Spanish, empobrecimiento. I don't know in Italian, but I hope you understand what I'm trying to say. Why is this important? Poverty is normally seen as static, as something that is going to be there forever, eternal, ineradicable. It is also seen as defining one's life. Someone is poor. If we think about a girl that doesn't have shoes, or that whose mom has to go to take water 2 kilometers away from her house, we would say she is poor. But she's not poor. She's a girl, she's a sister, she's a daughter, she's a woman with dreams of being a doctor, she's a student, she's a neighbor. This definition of poverty makes us forget about the person who is behind. Finally, this traditional way of understanding poverty is based on the economical dimension. Someone is poor if that someone, he or she, doesn't have money to develop his or her life and won't have it ever. But let's see what happens when we put the person in the center of the story, and we start to understand poverty as a dynamic situation, a joint of complex conditions that make one person be in impoverishment, not be poor. Do you see the difference? This new way of understanding poverty makes us think poverty is eradicable. We can fight for it because as well as someone enter a situation of impoverishment, someone can get out of it. This way, impoverishment doesn't define one's life, who shouldn't be defined as poor, and one's character and one's dream is what defines someone's life. It is a joint of material conditions that can be changed, and mainly that should be changed. With this small change of perspective, we understand that being in a situation of impoverishment is not someone's fault. It's not someone's way of being. It is a material condition that shouldn't be living anyone in the world and against which government should fight for. Finally, impoverishment is defined, I think, in many other dimensions than the economical ones. Societal, political, personal, and environmental dimensions are relevant to understand if someone is in the optimum conditions to develop his or her life and dreams. If we manage to understand that the condition of being in a situation of impoverishment is not permanent, then the poverty trap, la trampa de la pobreza, poverty trap that keeps the poor countries being poor forever is false. We can see these dimensions in the process of getting in and out of impoverishment in the first and second drawing. And we have been talking about big numbers, and it is something very difficult to sometimes to empathize with that reality of inequalities and human beings suffering their whole life. And it is easier, I think, with this change of perspective. Imagine it is you, imagine it is your friends, imagine it's someone you know, you care. When we think about fighting against poverty, we normally think about the rich northern countries sending money to the countries of lower income. This is somehow false because it is just one part of the story. A writer that I really like, a Nigerian writer, Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, who I'm sure you know, calls this half part of the story, the danger of a single story. Knowing the half of the story makes a lot of damage to the people that are not represented in the story. The truth in this story of poverty is that the African countries are the ones putting bigger efforts to end poverty by 2030. They invest much more in programs against poverty than they receive. Africa actually is the continent, and you can see it here, that receives more internal immigrants, millions more than Europe. And nevertheless, the story we have created around immigration, at least in Spain, makes everyone think that we are invaded by immigrants, that we are so generous to receive them. I'm sorry, but the numbers don't say that. And the numbers would mean a different, very different story. Sorry, not yet. African GDPs are growing more than any other GDP in the world, and are investing in social systems more than any other system to empower African people. Actually, they have their own agenda. For those who are in cooperation, they for sure would know, but Agenda 2063 was actually signed before 2030, and it has 20 goals that is with strict connection with the SDGs that we are talking today. In their own words, I'm going to read their own description of the Agenda 2063. It is a blueprint and master plan for transforming Africa into the global powerhouse of the future. It is the continent's strategic framework that aims to deliver on its goal for inclusive and sustainable development. And it is a concrete manifestation of the Pan-African drive for unity, self-determination, freedom, progress, and collective prosperity. So as I said, Africa is an emerging continent. It's full of entrepreneurship, full of youth, of power, of resources, of women power as well. And in the future decades, we will see the change of the world power distribution. I am asking now, are rich countries aware, and are they okay with this? Because this is not the story we normally hear. As the writers Bright and Ruby say, the old narrative of an Africa disconnected from the global economy, depicted by conflict or corruption, and heavily dependent on outside donors, is fading. A wave of transformation driven by business, modernization, and a new hatred of remarkably talented Africans is thrusting the continent from the world's margins to the global mainstream. Now it is the moment to know how we can do it, how we can join this fight against poverty. I won't go in depth to all of this, so I hope to discuss it later. I'm just 1 minute to finish. I think we have to work together. Public sector, private sector, social sector. We all have to have our own role, and this is what Agenda 2030 is about. We have to all get that hashtag Zero Poverty 2030 to be our role model of manifestation. As we have done with many other causes, we have demonstrated that when we go out to the streets and talk and change the perspective, we can change the world, the legislation, and many other things that have to be changed to change a whole system. Civil society organizations and civilians, anyone. We have to be in this battle of awareness and manifestations. We have to think about our own way of consuming, because this has a repercussion also in other parts of the world, and we have to try to know the truth about the different stories, the different speeches that people tell us, including that about the poor. Here is what I recommend this book. I think many of you are students from economy, but maybe not. This is a really, really good book. She won the Nobel Prize for this, and I think this is a very changing way of seeing economy. For governments, we have to ask them about having real commitment with this first goal. We have to ask them to take the human rights-based approach that we have been using in cooperation for many decades to use it now. And we have to ask for the ones who are implied or who are part of the different legislations to be part also in writing those legislations. For example, the poor, we don't take them into consideration. The people that live in impoverishment should be also taking the decisions about how to eradicate it with transparency, participation, accountability, and self-identification, and for sure looking forward, making societies more resilient and creating alliances, taking the local force as a very good first step. Finally, from the private sector, we have many other options as well, and we will talk in the discussion later. one more thing. As a former UN Secretary, General Secretary said, we can. There have been many generations who were making the world less sustainable, but they didn't know. We cannot be the generation who knew what we were doing, who knew the data, who knew what was happening and didn't do anything. So it is the moment to decide if we take the challenge. Because when we fight together, because when we fight globally against one common enemy and towards one common goal, we are able to achieve it and to defeat anything. We did it with COVID and we want to do it with poverty. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria. Thank you so much, and sorry for the thing that happened. So Riccardo, whenever you are ready, you can start. Riccardo, we have a translator, and we will do it like this. He will be talking for a minute or something, and then his translator will be doing the translation. Thank you, Riccardo.
Sì, grazie.
Puoi iniziare.
Sì, e vabbè, diciamo che noi siamo questa missione che sta a Palermo, che ospita circa 400 persone e cerca di aiutare in tutti i modi anche tutte le persone che vengono a chiederci aiuto, quindi i palermitani in difficoltà, le tante persone che anche in questo momento a causa del coronavirus sono in difficoltà. Quindi si ospitano queste persone dando, come dire, i servizi di letto, di cibo, insomma, di vestiario, anche di farmaci. E per tutti quelli che vengono le richieste sono le più disparate, dalla serie a rotelle alla busta della spesa, perché in questo momento anche la busta della spesa è diventata sempre più importante per tante famiglie.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, we are in this basically mission that basically helps around 400 people, especially those people from Palermo in difficulties due to COVID-19 pandemic. And we basically provide services such as place to sleep, for example, pharmaceutical products, also food, and especially also, for example, the shopping bag, because nowadays it's kind of difficult to do.
Diciamo che qui a Palermo, come in tutta la Sicilia, c'è un grande aumento delle povertà. Quindi noi che siamo in questa posizione centrale della Sicilia, come posso dire, dal punto di vista della solidarietà, stiamo ricevendo tantissime segnalazioni da tutta la Sicilia, oltre che da Palermo, da tutte le realtà comunali, dei carceri, degli ospedali e in particolare nell'ambito delle povertà c'è un aumento molto brutto delle malattie mentali, depressioni e poi delle dipendenze, quelle da alcol, da droga, perché questa mancanza di speranza non solo sta, come dire, dando un aumento dell'impoverimento, ma soprattutto tutto un ventaglio di difficoltà in più.
Yeah, so in Palermo there has been a huge growth in poverty, and as we are in a basically in a central position in Sicily, we have help that comes from all Sicily, from hospitals and so on, and we try to also help with mental illnesses, with, for example, now that it's a little bit more difficult also for many people with alcohol and drug abuse. And with this, basically, with this thing that it's missing for many people, and with this despair, we are basically trying to help them.
Quindi diciamo che per quello che riguarda questo momento, ovviamente è un momento molto, molto difficile, insomma. Anche questa, diciamo, questa iniziativa vostra, insomma, di Agenda 2030, dove si mettono comunque in sinergia un po' le esperienze, ma anche, come dire, la voglia di cambiare lo vedo comunque un segno importante per, come dire, non solo per dare speranza, ma anche per mettersi in comunione, perché la cosa bella che ho visto leggendo un po' le direttive è che soltanto mettendosi tutti insieme si può cambiare, e in particolare avendo la visione dei gruppi, perché spesso e volentieri quando noi parliamo di tutte queste cifre, no, di poveri che aumentano e cose varie, in realtà bisogna calarsi e vivere con loro e capire quali sono le difficoltà.
Especially in this difficult moment, this initiative of yours, and especially the synergy between wanting to change things, but also the volunteering work, gives hope, and especially we all go together, or especially also with the people that are basically in the back, we can basically make a difference.
Sì, diciamo che noi riusciamo ad avere questa visione abbastanza chiara perché viviamo con loro, diciamo, abbiamo fatto questa scelta di vivere, possiamo dire, di provvidenza. Cos'è la provvidenza? In realtà è un qualcosa dove non sono i fondi pubblici, ma sono gli aiuti anche di tante persone singole che ci aiutano a fare quest'opera. E devo dire, noi come punto di riferimento in questa scelta abbiamo questa scelta, come dire, fondante nella preghiera e nella fede, perché noi, come dire, quotidianamente affrontiamo queste, diciamo, queste problematiche cercando di, come dire, anche di avere tutta una serie di momenti di preghiera e di forza quotidiana che ci danno la possibilità di diventare un po' un ammortizzatore sociale. In realtà per Palermo e per la Sicilia, questa realtà che vive soprattutto degli aiuti di tanta gente della Sicilia, ma anche di altre parti d'Italia e anche a volte dall'Europa, vive affrontando e vivendo le problematiche dei poveri.
Yeah, so basically we are with them, with especially the people that are in need, and especially with this help from many people, and basing our speech on prayer and on faith. We try to find also these moments of prayer as basically as a social, basically as a social inclusion. So many people would come to us from all Sicily with these circumstances, and in this way we can also reach to more people that are, you know, lost in Sicily.
Diciamo che come realtà siamo molto preoccupati in questo momento, infatti abbiamo avuto proprio dal primo mercoledì di Quaresima, 17 di febbraio, fratello Biagio, che è il fondatore della missione Speranza e Carità, che ha sentito di fare questo digiuno completo e di preghiera proprio davanti alla cattedrale di Palermo, per mettersi non solo in comunione col Signore, ma anche e soprattutto per far capire alla società che c'è questo aumento esponenziale delle povertà, di questo far scomparire sempre di più i migranti, non solo non accogliendoli, ma non dandogli diritti, e poi tutto questo discorso di non rispetto dell'ambiente, che diventa ogni giorno più urgente e grave, e poi tante altre dinamiche, perché devo dire, ormai quando vediamo, devo dire, mi ha colpito molto l'agenda, perché in realtà tutti i temi sono, vuol dire, ben enunciati, ma in realtà adesso occorre questo cambiamento radicale partendo dal basso di tutto il modo di fare economia.
Yeah, so basically we are very concerned about all these problems that we are suffering in our area. And for example, the founder of our association on the first Wednesday of Quaresma, like he did a hunger, basically a hunger exhibition, a hunger demonstration, just to let the society know basically different main problems. The first one is the immigrants without basically rights here in Sicily. Also the speech about the ambient, and also basically all the people that are hungry in our region. And basically I was very touched or very moved with the topics of the agenda, and that's it.
Diciamo che in questo momento più che mai c'è bisogno di collaborare tutti a tutti i livelli, perché guardando appunto anche in maniera molto netta questi dati dell'agenda, si vede che comunque le povertà, a causa anche dei cambiamenti climatici, delle guerre, come dire, sono in forte aumento, ma come dire, anche questi impoverimenti sono in forte aumento. Quindi o noi lo chiamiamo, perché comunque abbiamo fede, o abbiamo più attenzione, come dire, alla fede, mettiamo insomma come al centro questa figura che è appunto Dio, per trovare comunque tante soluzioni, come dire, d'amore, perché in realtà per noi possiamo non parlare di Dio, ma parlare di amore e di empatia verso gli altri, dove i problemi degli altri diventano i nostri. Perché questa foto che per esempio state vedendo, insomma, di tante persone per strada, è, come dire, molto in aumento, ma soprattutto in aumento anche chi, non avendo più una prospettiva, non sa più dove andare a sbattere la testa. Scusate l'espressione. Quindi, come dire, vi è questa, proprio questo cambio, diciamo, dove veramente bisogna ripensare tutta la società, e il coronavirus in questo momento può essere un'opportunità per cambiare radicalmente e mettere veramente a regime l'agenda, che veramente, come dire, ha dei proponimenti molto belli e molto importanti, ma su tutti i temi che, come dire, sono non uno meno importante dell'altro, dalle acque alla terra, all'agricoltura, all'inclusione sociale. Noi nel nostro piccolo cerchiamo di farlo, ma siamo solo un piccolissimo esempio che va molto migliorato.
Yeah, so the main idea is that we all have to collaborate, because the poverty has basically, not only the poverty coming from the climatic change, but also from wars and so on, can give us also an insight to put more attention. And we are trying to use God as like the main solution for that, but also because it can make us like promote also the love among each other, so that the problems of others are also ours. So, for example, in this image, you can see that there are so many people in need that basically don't know where to go and do not have any social protection. And this, like with COVID, we have now an opportunity to basically include in the agenda all these ambients like agricultural and so on.
Allora, per quello che riguarda, insomma, dove vedete queste foto, insomma, di persone che sono in strada, diciamo, c'è veramente urgenza per dare delle soluzioni. E quindi a questo punto, specialmente voi che siete tutti quanti giovani, potete diventare un'opportunità importante per un cambio radicale di questo modo di pensare, dove chi è in qualsiasi ambito, nell'ambito del giornalismo, ma come nell'ambito della ricerca scientifica, si può lavorare per questo cambio integrato in tutti gli ambiti della società, perché attualmente il modello che noi abbiamo è un modello che lascia tantissime persone indietro, sia qui in Europa, sia in Africa che in altri posti. Quindi c'è veramente da mettersi, come dire, a regime e cambiare tutto. Mi ricordo una frase che diceva Bartali, il nostro ciclista come dire, italiano, diceva: è tutto da rifare. In realtà è veramente tutto da rifare.
Okay. I don't understand what I wrote. Anyway, yeah, so basically there are so many people that are basically in the streets, and we need to give them a solution. And it's a good opportunity also among you that are young people to think about how can we reverse the situation, and especially basing ourselves in many different sectors, such as, for example, journalism or science or research. We have to find a new model, because the model we are living in right now is leaving a lot of people behind. So it's a good opportunity now to basically change everything. And as one Italian person said, we have to change everything so that we can live all together.
Diciamo, in questi giorni, come da un po' di tempo, è sempre all'ordine del giorno sono le migrazioni di giovani da paesi a paesi, anche di persone più grandi. Noi riteniamo che le migrazioni, come dire, a parte ci sono sempre state, fin dai tempi antichi, le migrazioni possono diventare un'opportunità importante di crescita per ogni paese, quindi è importante, come dire, cercare di non solo di accogliere, ma anche di fare inclusione, e quello di intervenire anche nei paesi più in difficoltà, dando, come dire, opportunità, non chiudendosi. Quindi noi quello che cerchiamo di fare qui in missione, siamo tanti popoli, abbiamo tante lingue e tante culture, di trovare un punto di incontro. Vi posso assicurare che anche qui in missione cattolici, musulmani e ebrei collaboriamo insieme su tante cose, e spesso e volentieri, insomma, quello che leggiamo sui giornali c'è molto distante, perché tutte queste cose che vediamo spesso sui giornali non ci appartengono, di odio e di difficoltà varie.
Yeah, so now also talking about migration, especially the migration of young people and old people, we have to look at it as an opportunity, especially to look to include them in our society, and also the intervention in other countries in order to help them. For example, in our mission, we work with different, like people with different religions, like Muslims and also Catholics and so on. And in order to avoid all this hatred and all this, basically this bad behavior among people from different countries.
Quindi le migrazioni, perché proprio le migrazioni? Perché in realtà questi ci danno il segno di questa economia sempre meno, non solo valoriale, ma disuguale. Quindi noi abbiamo, per esempio, molti nostri paesi europei hanno in Africa, ma anche in altre parti, tante industrie che sfruttano i loro territori. E quindi noi abbiamo queste grandi masse di persone, sia per l'inquinamento che si sviluppa, sia per proprio la mancanza di terra e di opportunità che si spostano. Quindi c'è proprio come dire, da vedere proprio una prospettiva completamente diversa. E sicuramente la prospettiva più sbagliata è quella che stiamo anche ultimamente attuando in Italia, che è quello del respingimento. Ma non è soltanto un problema dell'Italia, è un problema un po' di tutti quanti. Quindi c'è proprio da rivedere, insomma, un po' tutti quanti, non guardare l'altro come dire, un problema, ma anche come una risorsa. E soprattutto quello di vedere come in ogni paese si possa intervenire, dicevo, ognuno di noi può fare veramente tanto, agendo, come dire, con provvedimenti concreti, anche piccoli a volte, ma importanti.
Okay, so yeah, the migration, like instead of seeing it as an unequal economy, basically this migration, instead of seeing it as basically a promoter of this equality, what we should see is basically how to eradicate it, basically how to change this thought in order to include the most people, the better. In fact, there are many rich countries that are enjoying other poor countries' territory, and there is a lot of people that are coming to rich countries basically because they don't have a territory to live in anymore. And we should see also different perspectives on how to proceed and how to help these countries. and we have to see each other as a resource, not as something, basically, not as a problem, but as a problem.
Quindi, vabbè, qua vedete in questa slide fratello Biagio che è stato diversi giorni per strada a fare questo digiuno per sensibilizzare sui diritti umani, sulle povertà, sull'ambiente. Prendo questa coperta che voi vedete, è stato l'esempio di quanto ognuno di noi può essere importante. Qui sono stati a fare questa coperta tanti anziani delle forze di polizia, quindi come dire, della polizia, dei carabinieri, della guardia di finanza, persone anziane che hanno fatto ognuno un pezzo di questa coperta. Per dare, poi l'hanno messa tutti insieme e l'hanno dato al fratello Biagio. Quindi il rapporto che deve essere con ognuno di noi, per esempio, ascoltavo oggi e incontravo questi due giovani che sono con me, uno fa l'avvocato e un altro lavora nell'ambito fisico. Come dire, ognuno di noi nel suo ambito può fare cose importanti e al tempo stesso mettere come dire, a disposizione le proprie capacità per fare qualcosa. Solo facendo rete e aiutandoci l'uno con l'altro potremo uscire da questa grande crisi.
Yeah, if you see, for example, this person in the image, he was basically a person that was doing a hunger demonstration. And in fact, this blanket that you see on top of him has been made by many retired police officers. And basically, I've been talking, for example, before with two young guys here. One of them studies law, and the other one studies research, like physical research. And if, for example, I've seen that if we can do at least something, just the very smallest detail, in order to help each other, we can see and tolerate each other, we can see how things might get better.
Quindi, come dire, vabbè, questo è il nostro logo della missione, che è un po' il simbolo. Il tronco tagliato sarebbe la persona che in questo momento non riesce a reagire. Il compito nostro è quello di far nascere questo germoglio, noi diciamo con quel sole, che sarebbe un po' l'aiuto del Signore, insomma l'aiuto di Dio. Quindi noi mettiamoci il nostro per poter aiutare. Quindi sempre faccio questo esempio di questi ragazzi che oggi sono venuti, ci siamo conosciuti. Noi, molti di noi, specialmente italiani, non abbiamo questa grande conoscenza dell'inglese, sono offerti per dire anche di aiutarci con, come dire, con le traduzioni. Sembra una banalità, ma in realtà una banalità non è. Cioè, nel senso che se ci mettiamo in rete, ognuno aiutandoci l'uno con l'altro, nelle cose che sappiamo fare, si può fare tante cose, anche perché guardando appunto l'agenda, sono veramente tante le cose da dover fare, che se non attuiamo un cambiamento capillare di tanti comportamenti, soprattutto mettendosi in sintonia, non riusciremo sicuramente a cambiare questo andazzo di impoverimento sempre continuo.
This is like from this slide. What you can see is our mission's logo. Basically, the trunk represents a person that cannot stand up, while the sun, while the sun represents the help of God. So basically, I like to use these two guys, these two young guys example by saying that in different sectors, basically different works, if we all collaborate together and get us in synchrony, we can change things and we can improve things.
Vabbè, noi siamo qui in missione, abbiamo, come dicevo in precedenza, questa mensa dove arrivano, come dire, aiutiamo tante persone, sia italiani che stranieri, che vengono da noi. Questa è la foto proprio della mensa, che tra l'altro adesso è addirittura, come dire, più organizzata, perché questa era una delle nostre prime mense che abbiamo avuto in missione. E poi cerchiamo comunque di come dire, avere tutti i possibili aiuti per tamponare. Diciamo che però, come dicevo, tutti i servizi che noi offriamo, cerchiamo anche di insegnare un mestiere e di rapportarci con la società per fare questa famosa inclusione. Tutto questo, come dire, è importante, si può fare, come si vede in questa mano, se ci diamo la mano uno con l'altro. Noi, come dire, a volte pensando all'antico Vangelo, pensiamo che le prime comunità cristiane vivevano tutti vivendo in comune, aiutandosi l'un l'altro. Ebbene, questo deve essere la modalità. Musulmani, cristiani, atei, mettendo al centro, che in realtà, se non vogliamo mettere al centro la parola Dio, mettendo al centro l'amore, quindi, come dire, quella stretta di mano che diventa fondamentale per cambiare, la stretta di mano come segno proprio.
Yeah, so like in the previous slide, if you see it, that's basically the place where we bring people to eat, people that don't have resources. Now it's a little bit more organized because in this image you see one that was from some time ago. And like basically what we need to do is to basically have be involved in the society in order to also know the problems that are around us, because sometimes it's really difficult to see it. Here we see basically the hands that basically for me they represent how to help each other. But especially we do not want to use the religious speech and use God in the speech. We can also use love. We have to love each other, and this hand basically represents very well what we are fighting for.
Io vi saluto e vi ringrazio per l'ascolto, ma anche per questa condivisione. E cerchiamo insomma sempre di più di operare tutti quanti insieme per migliorare il mondo.
I would like to thank you all for listening to me and for being there, and let's hope we can also improve the world together.
Okay, Riccardo, thank you so much. I think it was really good to hear this example. And also, Maria, thank you for this view of the SDG #1 with all the data and things. I think I was surprised of some of this data. So thank you, both of you, sorry. And if you like, we can start now. As you can see, well, my mates are, well, if you have any question, please be respectful and write them on the chat. And in other case, we will be starting answering some questions we have prepared for you. So it's just like a short answer, or okay, whenever you like, it's okay. So I will be sharing my screen. Okay, here we have the questions. The first one, I think we are starting with, okay, so Maria and Riccardo, are you confident about the achievement of eradicating poverty? I don't know who can start. Maybe Maria, you can go first.
Okay. Thank you, Anna. I guess you are asking about what we have already achieved. So for sure, I think it has been a good job, but not enough. And I think, as we said, both Riccardo and me, I think we could do more. I am confident about the fight. As I said, that the continent, the countries that are suffering more, they are leading that change. And I think that is something that really will be the key to change from a system that is unsustainable to a system that sustains the life and that doesn't use human rights as a discourse, as a speech, but as something that has actions and measures that are real. So I am confident, but I think we have to put it as the center and the priority of government, society, and for sure of everyone, because I think when we are all, and this is something Riccardo also said, when we are all more committed, things go farther and go faster. So I think we are better than before. We talk more about it, but we still don't put it as a priority as it should be if we really want to change it.
Okay, Riccardo, would you like to answer this question?
Allora, io sono convinto che possiamo sradicare le povertà se tutti quanti collaboriamo, in particolare voi giovani, date un impulso diverso a questa società.
Yeah, I'm very confident that we can eradicate poverty if we all collaborate together, and especially you guys that are young, give also another perspective and another impulse to these hands.
Okay, thank you. I'm happy to hear you answer this. Let's continue with the second question. Which best practices should be done by the governments to tackle poverty in all its forms?
I go?
Yes, for sure, yes.
I think one of the things is, as I said, to have it as a priority and to understand the local force has to be the one leading. This was, Riccardo also said it, we should be thinking globally and having commitments that are global, but we should be acting locally. And this is why I think each one, that it doesn't matter where we are working, what we are doing, we can join this fight because it means we are an important part of that system that should change systematically. So I think a human rights-based approach that for those who are familiar with it because they work in cooperation, it's something that we all do. We understand that we don't have to work in NGOs because we are better than other people and because we have our time and we should lose it because we work because there is a human right that is not in the center, that is not guaranteed. So this is why I think this is the same way of governing that they should be leading, and they should understand that this that we are doing, NGOs, should be their job, and that this is also for NGOs message. We should be doing political activism and awareness so that the governments are the ones giving the basic needs to the population. Because if you are, imagine you lose your job, but you still have a hospital to go, a school where to bring your kids, maybe you don't end up in the street eating nothing. So this is something that we'll have to understand. Poverty shouldn't depend on the individual, but on the community that should be given all these necessities guaranteed.
Allora, gli stati possono fare tantissimo perché invece di agire insomma, soltanto per slogan e per iniziative di facciata, si può investire molto di più, investire in risorse, collaborare col terzo settore, collaborare con le realtà che operano, ma soprattutto metterci una vera volontà di sradicare le povertà e di fare tutti quei cambiamenti che sono dell'agenda, dall'ambiente alle acque, insomma, quindi fare le politiche concrete e non soltanto per apparire sui giornali.
Yeah, so the state or the governments can do so much. The point is that they should stop doing some basically some fake initiatives and some like facades, and start doing actual social policies, such as, for example, in environment, like water, all these kind of things.
Okay, thank you both. We have already talked about this one, but both of you also, but how COVID-19 has affected to fight the agenda, sorry, I cannot see, okay, to fight of Agenda 2030 against poverty. How has it been the impact of COVID in the achievement of this goal?
Well, as we said, yes, it has been a big increase of the number of people that are left behind. So this message that no one should be left, I think people are left behind. I would like to, just because we have the opportunity, to go in depth in some of the data I gave, but I couldn't explain that much, so that we can understand how this really affected. When we think about, for example, how many people was tested in Spain, it was around, like around 5% of people tested. Well, in low-income countries, it was around 0.01%. When we're saying it, when you, with COVID, you become less, you have less money. Imagine in Spain what has happened and all the queues of people not having what to eat. Imagine what has happened in the countries where you live daily. So this income decrease has gone up to 90% in countries like Kenya, Thailand, where they didn't have anything to eat, and the government didn't have the resources to give those, imagine ERTEs, or imagine being at the house for a lockdown for 1.5 months. This cannot, and we could go on with education. Just 1% of all kids in Africa, in South Africa, had the chance to go online. So imagine almost 2 years with no school in some cases, in the more impoverished situations. With food, the same. With the people that were struggling with food, we are increasing, doubling the number of people that are struggling with food insecures. And death tolls, even though this is very important, and well, I work in Tanzania because with INACUA, even though that country, for example, doesn't make a test for population because they think there is no COVID, there has been an increasing number of deaths. So this is also something happening in many other countries where we don't know how big it has been because there are no tests. So they don't have, or they don't receive vaccines because of that.
Allora, il Covid-19 non ha fatto altro che aggravare la situazione di povertà e degli impoverimenti di tutte le realtà, non solo quella siciliana, ma mondiale. Quindi diventa ancora più urgente e più importante attuare in maniera concreta l'Agenda 2030 sotto ogni aspetto. Quindi diventa un elemento in più.
So yeah, COVID-19 has basically aggravated the situation, not only here in Italy or in Sicily, but also all over the world, with basically a mundial like an empowerment that has been all over the globe, basically, and we have to basically start or continue with the agenda of 2030 in order to, and also especially acting in a very specific way with this agenda, so we can continue the fight.
Okay, thank you. We have one question in the chat, but we will answer it after with another question we have, which is very related, both of them. So next question, we ask you, how can we measure the SDGs that deal with the eradication of poverty? You both have talked that, well, Maria, for example, you said before that $1.25 is the American measure. So how can we do this? How can we measure the impact? Sorry, the SDGs, yes.
Thank you. So I think this is very important for all SDGs. The agenda is very general, it's global, and so it should be taken locally. And each actor, each project, in ACUA in my case, the mission in the case of Riccardo, and each program that we want to develop that wants to fight against poverty should have its own SDGs. What we have to make somehow comparable is the measures that we come up at the end. But I think we cannot, for sure, we cannot compare the solutions and we cannot compare the problems among or between countries, even inside a country. We couldn't say, because there are many realities, and what I think should be taken from here is that we have to create our measures from the beginning. You have to be able to change them, because sometimes reality, many times reality changes the way you thought some problem was going to be solved. And for sure, go to the root of the problem. I think sometimes we measure things that are superficial and that don't talk really about if that person is having the necessities enoughly guaranteed to develop his or her own life. So I think more than say one way to measure them, there are many models. The UN has its own model. What I think we have to do is to take that agenda that is very short at the end and that takes many things out, because immigration, for example, is not in it. So we have to take it critically and go in deep, trying to make it us. I think every project should take the agenda and make it hers or him.
Allora, sicuramente, come dire, si può combattere la povertà facendo sì che i luoghi siano molto più accoglienti, siano luoghi, insomma, che rispettino l'ambiente, che rispettino i diritti umani, quindi tutto quello che è l'educazione delle persone, l'introduzione al lavoro, il rispetto dell'ambiente, ma inteso di tutto, insomma, quindi delle acque, del terreno, del suolo, quindi proprio tutti questi indicatori, insomma, vanno attuati e non soltanto guardare, come dire, il proprio egoismo, che questo è quello che sta imperando, l'egoismo di ognuno, di ogni nazione e di ogni persona.
Yeah, so basically we can eradicate poverty by basically becoming places where human rights are respected, where we have a good education towards to work, like the labor, but that has to be applied to every sector, like for example, also basically the environmental one, with the water, the land, and all these kind of things. But the thing that we should avoid in any case is the selfishness, because that will only make us fall from the agenda and not continue with anything like that.
Okay, thank you, Riccardo. So this is a really interesting question, at least for me. We are here a lot of young people. So what is the role of young people to fight against poverty?
I really like this question. I really entered this world of cooperation, of international cooperation, when I realized one data. I'm not I won't say that joke. I am going to ask you, because Anna, we don't have more people with the camera. I want to ask you one question very fast. If the world was just 100 people, how many do you think would go to university? Say a number. Don't worry.
Maybe 5?
Yeah, around 5. Before COVID.
I take it before.
Then when I entered the university, I was so young. I was 17 years old, and I was saying, what do I have? I see this reality. I don't like it. I see many people suffering. I want to do something. But I don't have anything. I don't have money. I don't have a way to change the world. I don't have a vaccine. I don't have anything. But I realized that I was one of those 7 people that would be privileged to go to university in the world. So I think education has a lot to do with that. And I think young people, we are the generation. We are very multiple and very diverse generation, for sure. But I think we are a generation that is committed much more than many others before. And for sure that wants to change the things that don't like. I think other generations were more likely to be okay with the situation because they thought they couldn't change it. I think we can change, we can do a lot. So this is a message to those young people that they are already adults, that decide for themselves, that decide whether they want to, where they want to work, what they want to do. I assure you that it doesn't matter where you are going to work, you can change the work from there, from communication, from selling, from having a company, from being a doctor, from being a lawyer, from being a politician. So what we have to do is to understand and keep making other people understand that this is a fight of everyone, and the agenda is, I think, very clear about that. We all have a role here. And to say just one more thing, I think awareness is one of the things we should do as young people. I think we did it with feminism, with anti-racism. We have to do it also fighting against those who doesn't have anything and sometimes are not heard because they don't have the resources to be heard. So awareness also brings professionals of tomorrow to think about that reality and change it from their own perspective.
Allora, il ruolo della gente, diciamo, giovane per combattere la povertà può essere molto importante. Ognuno nell'ambito dove si trova può fare tanto nella loro professione, con il proprio tempo libero, e soprattutto occorre questo cambio di mentalità, dove ogni cosa che succede all'altro interessa anche a me. E Agenda 21, Agenda 2030 diventa, come dire, l'elemento per capire che siamo tutti connessi e che quindi bisogna, come dire, agire localmente e pensare globalmente.
Okay, so the role of young people to fight poverty is really important. It doesn't matter basically in which sector you are, and it doesn't matter if it's in your own free time. But the main important thing is that anything that happens to someone has to be of my interest too. And like to follow with the Agenda 2030 and with all these politics, in the end, that's the main important thing, the main important idea. Vuoi salutare tu?
Sì, perché non...
Ok.
Sì. Devo salutare perché purtroppo avevo un altro appuntamento alle 18:25, semmai sono gli orari, quindi devo fare un altro collegamento con una televisione italiana del nord Italia per parlare della situazione che stiamo vivendo in questo momento come missione. Quindi io mi rammarico, insomma, avrei voluto stare ancora più tempo con voi, ma ho preso tutti gli impegni e quindi non posso trattenermi oltre. Scusatemi e veramente scusatemi tanto.
So I'm sorry, but I have another call with TV from the north of Italy, and like basically to understand the situation that the mission is going through and how the situation is. And I'm really sorry because I would have liked to stay with you, but for me it's impossible. The meeting was at 6:25 and it's already the time. But thank you very much.
Okay, so we will be answering very quickly the last question from the chat from Carolina. Sorry, I'm going to, okay, so the question is also in Italian, you can check it. And as you both said, as it's necessary to change a lot of things, in your opinion, which are the 3 main steps that we all should do in order to change this reality? Just a quick answer, Maria, if you can, and Riccardo also, and we will have them.
Okay, quick things are very difficult, but I'm going to try.
I know.
First, to know that reality, so to study, to read it from many perspectives, go and read about economic perspective, but human rights perspective, also read voices from the South. This is very important. This would be first topic, to know what we want to change. Then to understand that I think reality is a speech, is a discourse, is what you say about what we have. So if you are able to create the discourse, the speech you want to be in the world, you want to see in the world, you will be it. So finally, when you have studied it, when you have thought about what you want to be in the reality, instead of, I don't know, the speech of immigration, the speech of the poor, to have a different speech about human rights or about what moves you, the third step would be to create that movement. If that movement doesn't exist, go and embrace it. If it exists, go and join someone else, because I think it is very important to create alliances and to be there where you are most welcome and where you change things and where you see that other people welcome you also.
Okay, you did very good, Maria. I'm so sorry. Riccardo has left. Well, he was in a hurry, so it's okay. I will thank him in another time not here. And okay, if there are no more questions, we will be finishing. I think there are no more questions. Okay. So yes, that's it. That has been our second webinar about understanding Agenda 2030, only one decade left, the battle against poverty. I'm so happy to have you here, Maria, because listening to really young voices is really inspiring for the ones who are trying to make an impact or changing the world, as you said. Thank you so much once again. And for the ones who are here, who have waited until the end, thank you once again. Thank you for your support. You can follow us on our social media and be updated about the upcoming webinars. We will be having 2 more webinars in the end of April, if I remember good. Yes, in the end of April. And that's it. I hope you enjoy it and see you in our 3rd webinar. Thank you, Maria. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It was great. Thank you.